the first slide talking about some of the highlights of the budget, some of them positive, some of them contributing to a deficit that I'll talk about in a moment. First, some of the line items of the budget are maintained in terms of committed to maintaining farmland preservation, libraries, parks, historical and civic associations, and some others, Coleman Park, for example, Governor Dick, some of these quality of life efforts that we have. The debt obligations are lowering slightly because of some retiring debt and the new debt that we took out for the Department of Emergency Services Center is now a leveled out amount in the amortization. So from here on out, we have a very predictable debt service coming up in the next several years. So right now, it's not going to be fluctuating much like it has in the last 2 years. We did benefit from some interest rate increases by the Federal Reserve, which have contributed to higher yields on the cash reserves that the county has. So there is a bit more revenue in that regard. However, the assessed value of real estate has pretty much remained close to the same at only 0.98% growth, or 1% growth, which is the same as it was prior year 2023 at 1%. So while there's certainly housing subdivisions and things going on, and those are visible in some places, it doesn't have that much of an impact on the overall assessed values of about $11 billion in Lebanon County. Property and liability insurance rates are increasing significantly. That is not only in Lebanon County. It is not necessarily due to our experience or losses, but more to do with the industry itself, which is experiencing a lot of natural disasters. The fires out west, believe it or not, affect this sort of thing where carriers and reinsurance carriers are seeing huge losses, and it's affecting their liquidity, and so the only way they have to recover some of that is to increase premium rates. And for 2024, Lebanon County is experiencing a 20% increase in property and liability premiums. On the upside, our health insurance costs are increasing by 2%, and that is, I say on the upside because that is a relatively low number. Many are experiencing double digits. We have done fairly well in terms of our utilization and our experience in health insurance over the 22-23 year. So that is increasing by 2%, and that is among the peer counties that are in the pool that we belong to. That is the second lowest increase, second to zero. One county has a 0% increase, and the highest is a 16% increase, and we're at the low end of that. Wages in the county, existing union contracts that we have in place currently are at 4% increase for 2024. 4 of them are 4%, 1 is at 5%. I'll clarify a bit, but that one only has 4 members to the bargaining unit, so its impact on the average is very, very little. So 4% generally for existing union contracts, and budgeted for non-union is also 4% wage increase. I did speak to someone yesterday who shared a statistic with me that the average in the private sector has been 3.7% for 2023. So we seem to be right there, and as I'll get into a little bit more here, there's been a lot of effort toward maintaining workforce wages, or in some cases catching up to. But unfortunately that's contributed to the position we find ourselves in. So let me go right to that. The next slide shows the history of the county's budget in terms of surpluses and deficits over the last 7 or 8 years. Going back to 2016, it's hard to forget the tax increase from 2016, very large one in the history of the county, and was needed in order to get out of a deficit situation. And as was typical, we could usually hold that line for several years. As you can see, from 2016 to 17 to 18, the budget was pretty flat. In 2019, we began a small deficit, Usually we can go 5, 6, or 7 years and hold the line, but in 2020 it went south very quickly, as you can see. Same for 2021, and this was a result of just a total change in, I guess, the Great Resignation, as it's been called, and we were beginning to have to increase wages and chase the workforce and the competition to try to keep our employees and recruit others. So in 20 and 21, we really grew a deficit that reached about $4 million. So in 21 to 22, there was a tax increase, a millage increase that, as I say, typically would hold for a number of years. But again, the workforce competition was still just like never seen before. And in 2023, due to negotiating some new contracts with large increases, implementation of a salary study the county had done a year or two earlier, that deficit grew and began the very year it was imposed, the millage was imposed, and as you can see, grew till now of a $5 million deficit, the county. So during budget hearings, we tried to work through many of those, but much of this is due to personnel costs, wages and benefits, etc. So the next page I'll show a slide that demonstrates where the county found itself and what was needed and where we find ourselves today. So back in 2020, we were pretty much on par with inflation, or the CPI that is published every year. As 2020 went on and as the economy changed and the workforce changed, we dropped well below it, and actually in negative numbers compared to the CPI. In reaction to that, we, as I said, started to increase wages, renegotiate contracts at higher levels, etc. The jail is an example that I think is easy to remember. We were at a starting wage of about $16 and increased that to $21 because we were nearly at a 50% vacancy of correctional officers there. That went to $21, and we found ourselves being able to improve that to the point where I think we only had 3 or 4 out of 75 vacant positions, which is typical in turnover anyway. However, we find ourselves today in around 20, 22 vacancies again. So we're still battling this. But over the course of time, those efforts at least brought us up to the current CPI. The latest numbers we had were the end of October, so we projected a little bit into the beginning of 2024, and those we're meeting that again. So doesn't mean that the effort is over. We still have a number of places. Again, the jail is one of them. Sheriff's office is another. We have a number of places where there's a lot of competition. I think Tuesday, Dauphin County announced that they have cranked up their starting wage for deputy sheriffs, which has now exceeded Cumberland County's starting wage, which was the leader in central Pennsylvania. So while we've done a lot here for that, we are still a 5th-class county that's surrounded by 2nd, 3rd, and 4th-class counties who just have a deeper pocket and more resources to make those offers, and we end up being poached, or however you want to put it. In the Commonwealth also, all of the Commonwealth's offices are only 30 miles from Lebanon County, so we find ourselves with a lot of social services employees who find DPW maybe offering a better wage, and we've lost people to that. So, but this slide does demonstrate that there was a problem that was created in 20 and 2021, and a reaction from the county that over the years we've gotten ourselves back up to at least even with inflation. Next slide talks about the proposed budget. A few capital items that are in this budget are a municipal building elevator upgrade. There's an elevator at the east end of the building right by the Sheriff's Department that is original to the building. We did replace the 2 main original elevators a few years ago. We have delayed the upgrade on this one for now a couple of years due to some budget tightening, but at this point it's failing more than it's working. The parts are not available, and it's just time to do it. And the delay that we've taken to address it, it's only gotten more expensive to fix. So that is in the budget for 2024. Increased storage and server backup for information security in the IT department is in there as well. Video software updates and upgrades for central booking and the jail are included. That is something they have come to utilize much more since the pandemic, and it has stuck. Some like it and have continued to utilize it, but the technology we have been using is aged, so we're upgrading that. There are some facility improvements at the jail. It's a building that was built back in 1978 with a small addition put on in 2006, but we have some sections of the roof that are in need of repair. We have addressed a few of them, so we have $250,000 in the budget for a significant portion of the roof replacement at the jail for 2024, as well as some fencing improvements since the Chester County escape earlier this year. I think every jail facility in Pennsylvania has been taking a closer look at their perimeter security, both with video surveillance and physical fencing, and we're no different from that. So we did analyze that and found that there are some areas that need some improvement, and so we're going to do that. And lastly, other capital mention is some security improvements in the way of gate controls at the jail. Again, going back 45 years when it was built, it has electric controls, so there are electrically controlled gates, not electronically, and it's time we need to upgrade those. Some of them are not functioning any longer as they intended, and before we run into something that may pose a security issue, we want to make sure we can upgrade those. That is an expensive endeavor. The original estimate to do that is $988,000, so we are dividing that into phases over 3 years. Some other contributing factors to this operating deficit, in addition to mainly the wage growth and competition that we've dealt with, we have inflationary increase in inmate health services costs. That is about a $3.5 million item at the jail for inmate health services costs, and while we have appreciated the vendor Prime Care having pretty low increases since 2019, in fact it was 0 increase for a couple of years. It was 1% last year, and it's 3% for 2024. Still 3% on $3 million is a lot of money. The actuarially determined contribution, it's much easier when it was the art, is our contribution, the county's contribution to the retirement fund, in order to maintain a proper funded ratio in the pension system, and that for 2024 is $3.7 million. And also just a graph there showing county support to agencies, agencies such as Children and Youth, Department of Emergency Services, Mental Health, and so on. Those are a constantly increasing, steadily increasing, as you can see. From 22 to 23, it was about $1.5 million. From 23 to 24, we're looking at about $750,000 increase in county support to agencies. We continue to lobby the Commonwealth for funding support, particularly in mental health, but we have yet to have some of the cuts from 10 years ago restored. Rather, we're seeing stagnant funding in that part of it. So the budget proposed is just on the next slide. Sorry, broken down into a pie chart. This is something we provide every year, showing the breakdown of the categories of expenses. I mentioned debt service before. It's $2.7 million. I think we had a spike to $3 million the first year of taking out that debt, but again, the retirement of other debt has brought that down, and I'm expecting $2.7 million to be pretty steady now. So all of that leads me to the numbers and the proposed or recommendation for the 2024 budget. seeing the deficit on a prior page of $5 million, we do not have the capacity or the ability to take cash carryover and balance that budget. We do have reserves at the county. We have a reserve of $7.8 million, which equates to about 46 operating days if we ever find ourselves in some sort of a situation where there is no county budget, I'm sorry, is no state budget, and we're having to fund ourselves, or in order to fill the gap between the beginning of the year until taxes come along, or if there's just some major disaster that the county must dig into reserves. We are maintaining those. It is always an option to go to those reserves to balance a budget, but in this case, for example, if we were to fill a $5 million gap with our cash reserves, that would take us from 46 operating days down to 15, which would be a pretty scary place if we were even in a situation of needing short-term funds. We end up having to go to borrow, and at today's rates, that's not very palatable. So, the recommendation is to increase the millage a half of a mil from 3.8925 to 4.3925. And as you see on the chart to the right, that would take us from a deficit on the prior slide of $5 million, and exactly half a mil would take us to a surplus of $199,000 and a structurally balanced budget. Now, to put $199,000 surplus into perspective, the cost of county government is about $255,000 a day. So $199,000 surplus is basically a day. The impact to property owners if a half mil is imposed, shown there on the left, for a home valued at $150,000, it would be $47 for 2024. A home valued at $250,000, $78, and a home valued at $350,000 would be $110. In Lebanon County, the average home is just above $250,000, so that $78.50 is, I would be fair to say that that's the average cost of the increase. If you were to break that down further, not that anybody pays their taxes by the month, but that equates down to about $6.50 a month in an average increase, which would then boost the total property tax revenue to $46,296,000. The last page, oops, I didn't have that on the screen, sorry. The last page is the overall budget detailed into different categories, real estate taxes being the largest source of revenue. As I just mentioned, that number, you'll see it in the upper left corner there. All the others are relatively unchanged in terms of revenues, and then the expenditures are below that on the left with that surplus I mentioned. So that is the overview. Commissioners, it's up to you take action on the proposed budget for 2024, put it on the table for 20 days of public view, and we'd be back on December 28th for a final approval of the budget.
First of all, I want to thank you and the team that put this together and worked so hard to get it to this level. A lot of challenges, a lot of compromises took place. Getting it from what started over $7 million to get it to $5 million, and still have a responsible product here to present to the public. So,
may I just follow up on a little bit of, I guess, a picture of where counties are. I had a meeting Tuesday afternoon, a quarterly Zoom meeting with some of my peers from Central Pennsylvania, South Central Pennsylvania, and it seems that almost everyone is facing a deficit type situation, some more than others. In terms of millage increases, Berks County to our east has announced a millage increase. Blair County, which is a very similar county to Lebanon in that it's a fifth-class county. The city of Altoona is comparable in size to the city of Lebanon. I've always seen Blair County as a very close comparable county, and they're proposing a millage increase as well. Lancaster County is in a deficit situation, but they're filling that gap with ARPA dollars for, I would guess, one more year, as the ARPA is still available and what they have remaining. Same for Cumberland County. Cumberland County is facing a very large deficit. That was a Penn Lab article the other day. They have a $41 million deficit. They're going to use $13 million of that out of county reserves, and the remainder of it is also ARPA. So,
which is a one-year solution.
right. So, you know, they are structurally balanced, I guess, for 2024, but they're doing so with federal money that, yes, is 1 year. This proposed budget is structurally balanced, which is something that our rating agencies look for to see if, when there is a deficit, is a county willing to address that, and if so, how. And obviously, you go through all of the alternatives, which we did, and there are some capital items that are not on this list that have been cut for 2024 that we're going to just have to figure out how to do another time. But ultimately, the last resort is to go to millage, and that's what's proposed.
Can I just add that, you know, I don't want to split hairs on your balanced budget versus structurally, but we are structurally balanced versus somebody taking cash and giving it kicking it for a year down the road. Structurally means you have enough revenue to pay the expenses, and you get those together. That's vital in we don't chase the rate necessarily, the Standard & Poor's, but the cash on hand, 46 days, is right in the sweet spot. The pension payments, 11th year in a row that we've addressed those after maybe 10 years of neglect in that area. And then also the structurally balanced budget. 3 legs of that stool. The reward is right in front of you with the debt service, where we were able to time the retirement of some debt with the perfect sale of the bonds that we got 2.5% interest over 25 years, which, you know, all that, there was some luck in timing, but if you didn't have the A rating, and if you go back to, 2011, we were near junk bond status with that. So all these things that are painful, and we look at taxes as a last resort. That's why it took 2 weeks to get us to where we got to. But, most of the investment, as Jamie mentioned, is in our people. We're investing in our employees. Labor costs, and that's why it's across the board in the counties, because generally they're not able to compete with the public sector as well. We've had to step up and get more into the game. So that's where a lot of the pain has come from.
And this surplus, you'll recall, this deficit back in November started at about $7.5 million. So over the last month and a half, we've worked at it to bring it from that down to the $5 million. Some of that is accounting for vacancies, which is a common way of budgeting these days. All counties factor an expected level of vacancy, but I can tell you that when we sat down to analyze the departments to see where we could safely account for some vacancies for 2024, we have fewer vacancies than we did in 23. So, anticipating 2023, and when we looked at departments, thought we could cut, we had to back up and say, no, we really can't cut that much because they've filled positions. So while I can talk about the jail, has slipped in the other direction, there are departments, and I think department heads will acknowledge that they have been able to retain a little bit more. People are not leaving at the same rate, and even in being able to recruit. And the Public Defender's Office is an example of that. We had a significant number of vacancies in attorneys there, and out of 4 clerical positions, 3 were vacant. All 4 are now filled. So that's the easiest example for me. So we started off at $7.5 million. Best we could do is to get to $5 million, and that's where we are.
And there's one outlier there, which is maybe a little bit in timing, the 4% for the non-bargaining. We're committed to, we have 6 union contracts out there, and if you look right down the line, all 4%, except for that, the detectives at 5%, but that's 4 sizable unit. But that's why we felt for the non-bargaining, it was fair to push that number to 4%. To say to them, we value you as much as an employee, and we want to make sure that message is clear.
And that's something that you recognize while you're settling union contracts too, is that, when you settle on a number for a first year, second year, et cetera, there's clearly the expectation there that you're going to have to address that when it gets to non-union as well.
And I mentioned this yesterday to department heads that Bob's key person, Angel, really, and Michelle in HR with her team really worked hard to get. That's where the bulk of this work came from, to get us to something manageable that we can present today. So, any other comments? And my colleagues also, I want to thank them for the work that they put into getting this budget to where it is.
I'd like to add, I've been saying it ever since I got this appointment to sit here, is that I don't see waste in county government. I think counties of, the taxpayers of Lebanon County are getting good value. And that's a testament to the team Bob mentioned, Jamie and Angel and Michelle, and putting our budget together. But it's the day-to-day operations, and these people sitting around the room are our department leaders who are managing their day-to-day operations well. And a lot of the investments we made, I think about last year at this time, and going into the budget, and learned an awful lot that I didn't know before, and knowing we had just increased the wages at the prison again, that was a good investment, really, to stop the bleeding. And I mean that we had a real potential liability there if we did not make that investment. And I want to talk about the cost of actually, as we lose employees, and we read the exit interview forms from all of our employees. You see the list of today. We continue to see resignations, and the number one response of why they're leaving is for more money. And so we have to address that, and that's a cost to recruit, and train people. Prison is a great example that we go through extensive training, and there's a cost to that. And they get the training and leave for a higher salary in a neighboring county. So I think this is a good investment. We're not trying to beat those other counties. We're trying to stay on par, or at least competitive with those, to stop that bleeding. I think it's a very good investment. So I've been seeing this. I mean, last year I thought it was fortunate. Last year we were able to get by, but you see there's not fat, and I can say that there's not fat in this budget. There's very little capital expense, relatively speaking. If that were a bigger number, that's something that you might be able to dip into reserves or do something, but these are recurring costs, the cost of labor. I don't see it going down anytime soon. So we're just going to have to do what we have to do to remain competitive. Again, hats off to our management team.
Okay.
Jamie, Angel, Michelle, thank you for your hard work on this budget. All the department heads, thank you for doing what you could in your particular instances to keep the expenses within line. I don't think there's a lot more you can say. We do have to pay the bills, and thank you all for what you've done.
Good. Okay, we'll look for a motion to adopt the budget as presented.
So moved to adopt the budget as proposed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, any questions? Jim?
Yeah, we had talked about this, Jamie, coming into the budget season. You had talked about the $7 to $7.5 million deficit, and then it's now 5. Is it all salaries? Were there other areas that were cut that you haven't mentioned to get it to that number?
It was accounting for some vacancy, and it was cutting some capital. There were a few other items. Well, the jail gate controls, for example, that first came in at $988,000. We're down to $330 on that one, so we cut that by 2/3 just to phase it over some time. There was a paving project that was cut. There were some others that may not be coming to mind, but my head's full of projects and numbers right now. But I would say for the most part, yeah, I would about million of that probably was adjusting the workforce, or vacancies in the workforce. Now, of course, you know, if this economy or the environment for workforce changes and we start filling those vacancies, we're committed to the positions. So, you know, that could drive the budget up, and those vacancy savings aren't there any longer. We did see, like as I mentioned, we did see a little bit of that from 23 to 24. We weren't able to account for quite as much vacancy as we had going into this year. But yes, to answer your question, short order, most of it is workforce costs, yeah.
Right, you answered the question about what happens if you fill them, so you have to address it.
Right.
And so you were talking about, and you said a handful, like, what, 5 or 6 positions?
In
Now, how
terms,
many positions total did you temporarily say?
I don't have that number. We did it by whole numbers in departments. So if we looked at, for example, you might look at overtime at the jail and project that out. So if you adjust that number, it doesn't really take away any number of positions. It's just an adjustment to the overall cost of it. So I'm not sure I have that, but I could probably look for it. It's more than 5 or 6. I mean, we're talking, yeah, we're talking dozens. Yeah.
Yeah, we have 700 employees and, you know,
700 positions.
Yeah.
700 positions, yes, that are approved. And so, yeah, at any given time, we probably have 80 to 100 vacancies, you know.
Right, but it does not handcuff a department from filling those positions. It's just a more realistic view of, you know, the likelihood that they're not all going to be filled in the year, or you'll have turnover after filling.
And it's vital, you know, these positions have to be filled somehow, you know, and even though we budget for the vacancy rate, the public will not tolerate us not having the people to provide the services. I mean, these are services that you can't skimp on.
Right, and you always say that, and so, because is the biggest vacancies then coming out of the sheriff's department and out of the prison, where those are 2 agencies that provide very vital and necessary safety services for the...
I would say in terms of safety, public safety, the order in which we're seeing the biggest problems are the jail, 911, and the sheriffs, in that order. Probation has been pretty steady. They have turnover, and all of these agencies, understand, have turnover. I'll just refer to it as organic turnover, but a lot of law enforcement departments are a stepping stone for some people. I mean, there are people that want to go into law enforcement, maybe be a state trooper or a police officer sort of thing. So they'll get time in probation or deputy sheriffs, even corrections, and that's a reality. So there's always going to be a level of turnover that's attributed to that, but there's also competition. I mean, again, Cumberland or Dauphin County just increased their sheriff's deputy. That's a problem for us. Their sheriff's deputy starting rate, that's a problem for us, because, you know, we're just in the midst of getting a handshake on a contract, and a couple days later that news comes out. Director of DES, Bob Dowd, he was at a meeting up in Harrisburg, and he was either in close proximity to a PEMA dispatch center or a Turnpike dispatch center. I'm not recalling which one it was, but as he saw the employees going in and out, he said it looked like Alumni Day, because he was seeing faces who used to be dispatchers in Lebanon County who have gone, you know, on with the Commonwealth or the Turnpike, or someone who was paying higher. So those are the places we're seeing it. And we're having trouble hiring attorneys in both the DA's and public defender's office. The pool of attorneys that are, you know, between the ages of, you know, their 20s and their 50s, that pool of attorneys is small, particularly in Lebanon County. I mean, if you think about you look across the membership of the Bar Association in Lebanon County, it's a lot of people who are much closer to retirement than they are years left in their career. So that's also been a challenge, is in the legal hiring.
I did want to ask about that, because I know one of the things with the state budget not yet being completely finalized is there's money that's being held up for public defenders statewide, the governor proposed increasing money. Have you increased or stayed the same at what the county is paying for public defender's office?
Increased. And the VA increased, yeah. We were trying to hire attorneys at 50,000 a year, and it wasn't attracting anyone. And so the commissioners have given a little more leeway to those departments in trying to attract, and I think we have 2 vacancies now in the public defender's office for attorneys, but it was higher than that. But as Commissioner Kuhn mentioned, it takes a while for those people, particularly if they're recent graduates, to get up to speed. And that's true. He mentioned the prison, 911 telecommunicators. They aren't given autonomy on a board for 6 months until they're through their initial training. So you've invested 6 months in someone, and you hope they stay 20 or 25 years, but sometimes it's only 2, and you're back to the drawing board. So, but yes, attorneys have been a challenge as well.
Anything else? If not, all in favor of the motion? I'm sorry, Matt.
It's okay, I'm in a different spot. We've talked a lot about the 911 surcharge. Is this budget reflective of a worst-case scenario of that not being passed?
It's reflective of flat funding. So if the legislature renews that fee, which sunsets in the end of January, goes to 0 in the end of January, nothing's done. If they renew that at $1.65, that's what's in this budget. If they don't renew it, and it falls flat, there's a $3 million hole in addition to what we're facing.
The 8,000 a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the days are running out for that to be resolved.
Yeah, from what I understand, the House of Representatives has very few days left.
Right.
3 days left and if they don't act, before the end of December, I would say, counties are going to be in a position, even though it sunsets in the end of January, can't wait until January 31st to renew it, because the phone companies are including it in their billing. Their billing's going to go out in January, and it's either going to or not going to include that fee on it, and that's a $500 million across the Commonwealth the counties receive from that. So it is.
And it
huge.
equates to an automatic property tax increase. Now it's a fee on the phone that everybody has, whether they pay property taxes or not. It could be a drug dealer, it could be anybody that owns a phone is helping to pay for that emergency system.
I guess going to that point, the last thing we want to do is raise taxes. But when the state doesn't pass these kinds of 911 funding fees on time, that puts us in $3 million at a disadvantage, day one. And it's just not fair. That is why our local people, especially widows who don't have big pensions, if any, they suffer when we have to raise taxes. We have our backs against the wall, and the state needs to realize that. They need to step up to the plate, pass this fee, and not flat funded it. That fee needs to go to $2.60 on a phone. If you go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, how much does it cost you for a cup of coffee every morning? Where are our priorities? I am really disgusted that this is on the back burner for the state. It needs to come to the forefront today.
Jim?
3 session days next week, I believe, is the timetable.
10, 11, 12.
They might be back in after the holidays. Again, a very short window. What is the county's game plan? Are you going to wait until it sunsets? Because we've already talked, James, this is uncharted territory that the county's never had to face.
Right.
Do you have to advertise it for 21 days again because you're changing the budget? What are all the dynamics that are in play here if this doesn't happen?
The advertising, I don't have the immediate answer to. I know that the county code provides for a mechanism to reopen a budget in January of the beginning of a commissioner's term. So this January is that only window to reopen a budget. I don't know of an occasion where it's ever happened. Maybe it has, but it's not something that happens that
It's not common.
it's very uncommon. So, I guess the options for the county would be, if we're sitting here on December 28th and it hasn't been renewed, they could pass the budget, wait a little bit longer to see if the legislature reacts. And the options in January would be to reopen this budget. They could recalculate the millage. They could assign some of the unassigned reserve cash to it, or just ride it out and cut throughout the year as we go. I mean, those are the only options I see. $3 million is equivalent to, 3/5 of what our deficit was going into this. So, but I've never experienced the reopening of the budget. I don't know anyone that has, but it's there. And I don't know if other counties would do that or not.
Conversely, if we do get the funding, and they would go to the, whatever it's 197 or 230, whatever they might do, then we would have time hopefully to revisit, to adjust downward.
Right. So
If
if
we get
say
an
this week,
increase.
right, so if this week, let's say, they increased it to $1.97 or 230, I think is what CCAP's ask was, then yes, there may be, well, there would be. I mean, we would adjust the revenue upward for DES and 911, and then the amount of county support from the general fund would lower, and then potentially the millage could go maybe to a 0.45 or something
Correct.
like that.
Yep.
If
The word
I-
has it, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say, if I accidentally said 260, I meant 230.
It's 230, I believe.
If I said it wrong, I apologize.
Okay.
It came out.
Well, you prepare, because Lisa has said that they think it's going to be 195, and there's been movement on it, so they're going to renew it. If it happens, it's probably going to be that same rate, so, I mean, I guess, best case scenario.
I don't know.
Well, there's from your lips.
Well, that's best case scenario. But I am curious, though, again, if it falls somewhere between, or they say go to $2, granted, you have a surplus, but does that then kick the can down the road for how many days you have to advertise?
Well, from today's introduction of the budget to the final adoption on the 28th, we can make some changes within that period. Not significant, but, I mean, something that would be, in the realm of a few $100,000, we could do that
Yeah.
before the
And
28th.
the 21 days doesn't, the 20 days doesn't renew. Like,
No, no,
That's
no.
just
No.
the 20 days to
Right.
have it out there.
Right.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, so moved. I appreciate all the work, and we have a budget. Yes?
Two things. One is that our assessment appeal hearings are held the third Thursday. There are so many meetings, MPO, Conservation District, all, Farmland Preservation, they're all that third Thursday. Is there an appetite? Would you consider moving to the first or second Thursday for assessment appeals? I think Dan's here if you need any answers.
I'd be willing to think about it.
He would need to know so it can be advertised.
Well, when does he, I mean, is you ask me to make a decision right now, on the spot? I'm not prepared.
This is the third, and that's already Commissioner Day. I would think the first, I would prefer to have it on the same day as we have Commissioner meetings.
The first one?
If we're going to move it, that'd be my suggestion.
Now, officially, that is established, would be on January 2nd when you organize all of your boards.
Okay, so we can do that then, but
That's when it would happen.
we don't have to.
That's when you establish your meeting
We don't have to
dates.
make a motion today.
No,
Okay.
no, well, you don't have any more dates as this board, you don't have any more meetings remaining, so.
Right. I didn't know if he had to have it to advertise for the new year. That was my question, but,
No, the only thing we advertise between now and then is that particular day on January 2nd, which is
Okay.
going to be at 11 o'clock when you organize the board.
At the 28th.
28th is just to pass the budget.
okay, then we have that time.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
advertised, yeah.
That's what I wasn't
What time
clear
is
on.
11.
On
So
the
swearing-
28th?
Swearing in is at 9, no, on the 2nd of January.
No, what time is the meeting
Oh,
for the
9:30.
9:30, okay.
Regular time.
On the 2nd?
28th.
Oh, on the
28th is a regular
You're
commission
going
meeting at
back and forth.
9:30.
Who's on
January
first?
2nd, swearing in at 9, organization at 11.
There you go.
Please refrain from any more questions regarding
And then the final question I had was, will we be having a workshop or addressing at a regular meeting the final commitment of all the funds for ARPA? Because I think that needs to be done by the end of the year.
No,
20.
that's next year.
Oh, the end of next year?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking it was the end of this year for 2024.
No, that would
Okay.
be-
That would be a lot to squeeze it in.
Well, yeah, that's why I was wondering. We haven't talked about it, so.
Yeah, and we don't have the level of funds that
No,
Lancaster
I
has
realize
kept
that,
behind and
but-
so on. A significant portion of
Right.
the ARPA funds were used for the construction of the
911.
Radio.
911 for the radio system upgrade and for the additional supplemental salaries that you awarded to county employees after the pandemic, so.
So we have a
That's
full
most of
year
what-
yet, then
yeah.
we're good. Okay.
Okay, anything else from the floor? If not, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.